The Washington Commanders have plenty to prove this coming season as a whole, but there are 8 players on offense specifically that I think have the most to prove, and it all starts with rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels. That and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, and I'm your host, David Harrison, credentialed member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for CommanderGameDay.com, a part of Sports Illustrated, here with you every Monday through Friday, and I greatly appreciate you for coming through today. Every day, I greatly appreciate you for coming through every day. On today's episode, why the first cut of the offseason is going to come from a position that has zero competition, and we're talking about Commanders offensive players with the most to prove this season, all starting with quarterback Jayden Daniels. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. If you want to discuss this episode or anything else Washington Commanders related, or if you got questions you need answers to, you can text me directly by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders today. Become a Locked On Commanders insider. From there, you will get messages, content, analysis, and more delivered directly from me to your phone and delivered from you to me directly through your phone. No hashtags, no downloads, no filters, none of that required. Simply go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders and become an insider today. I've got 8 players with the most to prove in Cliff Kingsbury's offense this year, and it's all going to start with rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels. Now, the Washington Commanders, we've talked about this before every day, they've got about 41-year contracts, not 41-year contracts, but about 40 contracts that expire at the end of the 2024 NFL season. So in reality, there's about 40 players that have something to prove to this Washington Commanders coaching staff, because if they want to be in this organization next year, they've got to show this year that they're worthy of being a part of this organization. But I wanted to go beyond just that scope. Don't get me wrong, 2 of the players on my list of 8 on the offense do have expiring contracts at the end of this year, but I wanted to get outside of the scope of just simply, well, they've got an expiring contract, so they've got something to prove, because that's a little bit of a no-doubt, right? So we start with quarterback Jayden Daniels, who certainly does not have an expiring contract. In fact, he actually hasn't even officially signed his first contract at the time of this recording. Doesn't actually have to until the start of training camp, so we do have some time before we need to actually worry about that. So nothing to worry about there, but he's a number 2 overall pick. And Washington fans, you already know the pressure that comes with being the number 2 overall pick. You've lived through 2 recent number 2 overall picks, at least, depending on how old you are. Chase Young was the most recent number 2 overall pick for Washington. Robert Griffin III, the previous number 2 overall pick for Washington. One of them a quarterback, one of them a pass rusher. Both of them tons of pressure on their shoulder. Both of them expected to be franchise change makers, impact players, whatever you want to call it, and especially the quarterback, right? Expectations even higher for him than anybody else. But it goes beyond that as well. The second season for most NFL players is supposed to be your breakout season. And every day, if you've been here for a while, you'll go back to our conversation last year during the offseason about Jahan Dotson, who was expected to be a breakout player in 2023 for the Washington Commanders. And we kind of talked about the rates that players have those breakout seasons, what a breakout season really is. We'll get into that again this season, of course. We're not going to dive deeply into that here on this episode today. But the bottom line is, second season is, quote unquote, supposed to be the breakout season for most rookies, especially first-round rookies. But in order to have that breakout season, you got to have a solid foundation first. And that's why, like, when we went back to last year talking about Jahan Dotson, you saw the touchdown production, especially early before he got injured. But even after he came back, after a couple of games to really get back up to speed, he really started having an impact on the offense again. And you saw that ability. So that platform is what helped launch everybody into this anticipation of him having a breakout season in 2023. He himself expected him to have a breakout season. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But again, you need that solid first year to have that breakout year. And for a quarterback, I think it's doubly important. So for Jayden Daniels, it's going to be really hard to expect him to have a quote-unquote breakout sophomore season if his first season is in the dumps, right? If he comes out of the site his first season, the 32nd ranked quarterback in the NFL, or even worse, depending on how much play time he gets, all those things. If he struggles to even see the field or struggles to stay on the field, then it's going to be really hard to project him as a breakout player in his second season. So that alone, that pressure alone kind of comes with it. The athletic talent is honestly a small part of it. Really, what separates the NFL quarterbacks from the college quarterbacks is IQ and decision making. Now, there's certainly plenty of areas in his tape at LSU and even at Arizona State to look at his football IQ and say the dude is a smart football player, but the decision making is somewhere where I think a lot of people have concerns. That sack to pressure ratio, all of those things are going to be things that everybody's watching deeply in the National Football League. And that is a challenge for Cliff Kingsbury, Tavita Pritchard, his two primary offensive coaches, to really kind of work on with him here during this portion, because right now he can't be sacked anyway. So you want to be able to see him kind of make those decisions, and you want to talk through making those decisions. But it's not all on him either. And that's kind of the part of pressure, like sometimes can really kind of be an annoyance, right? A pain in the butt, so to speak, is that Jayden Daniels needs to have a reasonable amount of time given to him by his offensive line. And this offensive line, just like last year, a lot of replacements, a lot of new pieces. Really, outside of your far right offensive lineman, your right tackle, Andrew Wiley, your right guard, Sam Cosmi, everybody else is new. And not only everybody's new for Jayden Daniels, right? But as far as a five-man unit, 3/5 of that unit are new. Even if Cornelius Lucas is the starter at left tackle, yeah, he was with the team last year, but he wasn't a starter, and he certainly wasn't playing next to Nick Allegretti or Michael Dieter at left guard. Certainly wasn't playing with Tyler Biadasz at center. So either way, it's all going to be new outside of the right guard, right tackle combo. And then for Sam Cosmi, he's got to play next to Tyler Biadasz. How he reacts to playing next to Tyler Biadasz impacts how he plays next to Andrew Wiley. So there's just a lot of things that go into that offensive line unit, and that's going to impact what Jayden Daniels can or cannot accomplish in his own rookie season. And then finally, that pressure is cumulative, right? We talk about pressure being cumulative all the time. You saw it with Sam Howell last year as the losses started to pile up, as the interceptions started to pile up, as the sacks started to pile up. What you saw was a quarterback that was sometimes a little too trigger happy, sometimes a little too, I don't even want to call it patient, because it really wasn't patience. It was almost being frozen in that anticipation or that doubt or that frustration for how the season had been going and how his own play had been going. So that pressure is certainly cumulative. The only way to lessen that pressure going into 2025, again, have a solid 2024. If he has a struggle, if he struggles a lot in 2024, especially if it's just his struggles, if there's struggles that we can look at and say, and that offensive line really didn't help him out, and that's it, then, to a certain extent, there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. But if he comes out of 2024, if we come out of 2024 and it's decision making and it's throws and it's off target, it's inaccuracies, it's bad interceptions, it's fumbles, it's taking bad hits, things that Jayden can control and should control, that's going to be a long off season. I mean, people, depending on where this team is drafting too, like if this team is drafting top 5, there might be a quarterback that by the time we get to next April, people are like, look, after what you saw from Jayden, you see this guy coming out of college, you really kind of have to make that decision too. Those are going to be questions. Or maybe there's a veteran that comes available. Hey, should this team go get the next day Kirk Cousins that's coming out there, or whatever it is? Just, you know what I mean? A lot of pressure that could potentially come out. And as much as people want to say they don't pay attention to all that, they don't see all that, they do. They see it, they pay attention to it, they feel it. And the thing about pressure is everybody feels pressure. Nobody doesn't feel pressure. Nobody's immune to pressure. Now, some people handle it better. Some people hide the fact that they're under pressure better, certainly, but everybody feels it. So for Jayden Daniels specifically, you want to come into 2025 playing off of a good platform, coming into the season with confidence, not with an overabundance of pressure. Again, not all on him. So he's got to control what he's got to control. And then the final part of that pressure, the fact that you were drafted over some dudes. You were drafted over Drake May. You were drafted over J.J. McCarthy. You were drafted over Michael Penix Jr. That matters. That is a part of the equation. Drake May or may not play this season. J.J. McCarthy, I think he's playing this season. Michael Penix Jr., no real plan to have him play this season. But if Drake May and J.J. McCarthy go out there and play, and they go out there and have significantly better years than Jayden Daniels, that's going to just add to the pressure that we talk about, the pressure that we add, the fans add, and that he's going to feel coming into the 2025 NFL season. For all those reasons, Jayden Daniels needs to have a very good season. He's got a lot to prove as a rookie quarterback, especially with that number 2 overall pick tag on him, but he is not alone. We're going to talk about 7 of his offensive teammates that also have a really good amount of things that they need to prove in 2024. Coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Right now, you can purchase NBA Finals Game 1 tickets in Boston. That's how confident people are that the Boston Celtics are headed to the NBA Finals for $722, just over $700 with our promo code. If you use that, if you're like me and you want to get the most bang for your buck, you can find the best deal on GameTime.co or the Game Time app. And that deal right now would be Section 13 for NBA Finals Game 1 in Boston. That ticket costs you $2,383 a piece. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen, your first view today and every day. Make sure you come back tomorrow. We'll have another mailbag episode coming. If you want to get a question into the mailbag, insiders, just text me. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to become an insider today. Text me your question, and we will be off and running. YouTubers, Twitter, whatever you want to do, send me your questions in the YouTube comment section or hit me up on Twitter at dharrison82 on that platform. In the meantime, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day, bringing you the biggest stories, can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson are the next two players I've got up that have something to prove in 2024 on the Washington Commanders offense, and I'm putting the duo together. Fair or unfair? There's already doubt that has crept in and infiltrated the Washington Commanders media and fan base, wondering, is Terry McLaurin really going to be a number one wide receiver in the NFL? Being a number two, for considering where Terry McLaurin got drafted, being a number two wide receiver in the NFL is great. There's a lot of people who got drafted where he got drafted who would love to be number two receivers in the NFL. But let's be honest, Terry McLaurin's goal, expectation of himself is to be the number one guy. He wants to be the guy that a franchise can build around. Fans thought for the longest time Terry McLaurin is going to be a number one receiver, or he is a number one receiver, just waiting on his quarterback. Media has been giving him all that love as well, but there is some doubt starting to creep in amongst media. You can see it in some of the coverage, and amongst fans, you see it in the comments all the time. People wondering, is Terry McLaurin a legit number one, or does this team need to go find themselves a legit number one? The problem here is they've also got Jahan Dotson, and Jahan Dotson hasn't done anything to prove himself as a number one receiver in the NFL either. But most NFL teams don't really want two number twos. They want one number two, they want a legit number one, and then they're okay being a number three. But Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson also look too good to be number threes, which means you're not going to pay both of these guys. And the situation here is that if Jahan Dotson doesn't have his fifth-year option picked up next offseason, so this is Jahan's third year, which means the 2025 offseason, the Washington Commanders, just like they had to decide with Jayden Daniels this offseason, have to decide if they're going to pick up Jahan Dotson's fifth-year option. If they don't, then 2025 will be a contract year for Jahan Dotson, just like 2024 is a contract year for linebacker Jayden Davis. Well, Terry McLaurin is also in a contract year in 2025. So if Jahan Dotson doesn't do enough this year to convince the Washington Commanders to pick up his option next year, then you basically have two receivers that, as it stands today, before we get into the season, a lot of people are starting to look at it and say, you might be a really good number two, but you're not a number one, and you're both going to be on expiring contracts. The Washington Commanders are not going to pay both of you guys. So if Dotson's option does get picked up, then it likely means he did really good or very good. McLaurin is likely not going to get an extension in that season. They'll let Jahan Dotson play 2025, 2026 on his rookie deal. Terry McLaurin play 2025 on an expiring deal. See what happens, unless Terry McLaurin just completely balls out. Now, both these dudes come out and ball out this season. Dotson gets his option picked up. McLaurin gets another extension during the offseason, maybe. And we can just roll this thing forward and everybody can be very happy. But it's more likely than not that only one or the other is going to have 2026 secured. Jahan Dotson 2026 secured through the fifth-year option being picked up, or Terry McLaurin having 2026 secured by having an extension negotiated. A lot of times players and agents with 1 year left on the deal, they like to negotiate those extensions. So that would be next offseason for Terry McLaurin. Something to note, Terry McLaurin does carry a $5.6 million dead cap number in 2026 if he is not on the roster. That's part of his last extension, or his only extension so far, his second contract in the NFL. That deal included $5.6 million in void money that is in 2026. So again, if McLaurin is not on the roster past 2025, then the Washington Commanders will incur a $5.6 million dead cap number for the 2026 salary cap. So that's why I put those two together. Andrew Wiley, right tackle, is the next offensive player that I feel like has a good amount to prove here in this coming season. 2025, also a contract year for Andrew Wiley. He's turning 30 this August. So basically, this is the last chance that Andrew Wiley is going to have in his career. He's started before, so I don't want to make it sound like he's just never done it. But this is basically it. This is your opportunity, your last opportunity in the NFL to establish yourself as a starting right tackle. It's not going to be for very long, but if you have a solid 2024 coming into a contract year in 2025, playing in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, maybe you're able to convince the team, tack on another 2 years. Let's take this thing out through 2027. Get me to say 33. I think the 33 years old is what he would be. You know what I mean? That's a pretty good deal. Be the starting right tackle for the Washington Commanders as they usher in Jayden Daniels, give them a little bit of breathing room before they have to go spend high draft capital on a right tackle. And Andrew Wiley honestly has kind of the best roadmap to doing this. He's got the most experience playing with a quarterback similar to Jayden Daniels. Now, I like during the draft process, Bucky Brooks said that Jayden Daniels is more Lamar Jackson, whereas he uses his athleticism as a weapon, versus Patrick Mahomes, who has athleticism and can use it, but doesn't necessarily use it as a weapon, but still very similar body types, very similar athletic ability. So Andrew Wiley, having played with Patrick Mahomes, kind of knows what it's like to deal with a quarterback similar to that. So that experience should help him. And experience hopefully is helping the rest of the group as well as he kind of passes that on to them. So Andrew Wiley is another one. Running back Brian Robinson is another player. And this guy, again, another guy that's got a 2025 contract season. So a lot of important contracts expiring after 2025. Right now, some outlets still have Austin Eckler projected as the starter for this Washington Commanders team. I've told you, I think Brian Robinson is running back number one. The evidence that I've seen on the practice field tells me that Brian Robinson is running back number one. I know a lot of my fellow beat reporters think that Brian Robinson is running back number one. But outside of Washington, a lot of people have Austin Eckler punched in or penciled in to that space. Why? Because they haven't seen a lot of Brian Robinson. So for me, the other beat reporters, you as a Commanders fan, you've seen more Brian Robinson that, say, these national guys have seen. Guys like PFF, who ranked Austin Eckler in their starting running back rankings, not Brian Robinson Jr. So the reason that B-Rob hasn't been able to show the national media, whatever you want to call it, everything that he's capable of, is because he's been underutilized, right? 19th in carries in 2022. Granted, he missed the first 4 games of the season after the robbery attempt. 33rd in carries in 2023. So it went way down compared to his rookie season, despite the fact that B-Rob was able to play in every game last year. Only had 12 targets in his rookie season. Scott Turner did not use him as a receiver at all. 43 targets in 2023. So he certainly went up. But even that still only ranked 27th in the National Football League. And think back to last year, how much better could things have been if B-Rob was more involved in the offense as a receiver? More Antonio Gibson, more B-Rob, probably would have done a lot of good things, right? So Brian Robinson, we can sit here and say the national media, outsiders don't know him as well as we do because they don't see him as well, so they don't see the potential. And that may be true. But after 3 years, if you have 3 different offensive coordinators, 3 years in the NFL, and nobody's wanting to use you, people are going to start to wonder if the reason is you, not them. Cole Turner is the next player that I have coming up that's got something to prove. This is a make or break year for Cole Turner. He already comes in as the number 3 tight end. This team brings in Zach Ertz. They draft Ben Sinnett. Right now, I've got him penciled in as the 4th tight end. If he cannot show this stat that he's improved as a blocker, he may not even make this roster. De'Ami Brown, wide receiver, is in a contract year this year, along with John Bates, who tight end is also in a contract year. Right now, the question for De'Ami Brown is, what do you do better than Luke McCaffrey, who is 2 inches taller than you, the same weight, so you kind of have the same build, a little bit of the same build. De'Ami's definitely more stacked, more stout of a player. But if Luke McCaffrey is more dynamic than you are in an offense that wants to be dynamic, you may lose your spot in this roster coming up next offseason. John Bates is kind of in that same role. This is a make or break year for him. He's got to show this team. This team, I feel like, basically feels like that Ben Sinnett is eventually going to be that tight end number 1. Learn from Zach Ertz, develop as a rookie, come in year 2, maybe year 3, take over that tight end 1 role. John Bates, your future in Washington, probably looks like a tight end number 2 role. But right now, you may be viewed in the future as a tight end number 3. If you don't lock in your spot as tight end number 2, this team goes back to the NFL draft next year or the year after that, gets another 3rd or 4th round pick tight end, and you may find yourself on the outside looking in. So those are my 8 offensive players that I feel like have significant amounts to prove this season. John Bates, tight end. De'Ami Brown, tight end. Cole Turner, or De'Ami Brown, wide receiver. Cole Turner, tight end. Brian Robinson, running back. Andrew Wiley, right tackle. Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson together as receivers. and quarterback Jayden Daniels. We will do the defensive side later this week, but coming up next on Locked On Commanders, we're going to talk about Brandon McManus, the first player that I think is going to be cut by the Washington Commanders. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that thanks to our friends over at FanDuel. It is winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL. And FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers, you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. My $100 bet on the Minnesota Timberwolves, not looking too good. And their odds are even greater now. Plus 1,200 the last time we checked. So you can make a lot of money if you think the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to be able to pull off the upset over the Dallas Mavericks and win that series when it's all said and done. However, if you want to go chalk with Boston Celtics at minus 240, nobody's going to blame you. So the NBA Finals matchup certainly looking more and more like it can be predicted. Boston Celtics, Dallas Mavericks likely to be the two teams meeting in the NBA Finals. But whatever you think is going to happen, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders with a story that dropped Monday afternoon. I was actually just on my way up to my office to record our Tuesday episode when this story dropped. And this is why I wait a little bit. This is why I don't drop my episodes super early. I always want to kind of wait a little bit, let news happen if it's going to happen. Brandon McManus, kicker for the Washington Commanders, the only kicker on the Washington Commanders roster at the time of this recording, has been accused of sexual assault. That, according to a report, that was filed by ESPN's Mike DiRocco with some help from ESPN beat reporter John Keim, who's out here on the Washington Commanders beat with me every single day. And the article says, quote, "Two women are suing kicker Brandon McManus and the Jacksonville Jaguars, alleging that McManus sexually assaulted them during the team's overseas flight to London last year," so that being in 2023, end quote. Of course, McManus was with the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2023, not with the Washington Commanders. The claim or the article continues, quote, "The two women identified as Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2 in the lawsuit filed Friday night in Duval County Circuit Civil Court accused McManus of rubbing himself against them and grinding against them. They also accused the Jaguars of failing to supervise McManus and failing to create a safe environment for staff serving the team," end quote. The Washington Commanders, through a spokesperson, did issue a statement in which they said, quote, "Earlier today, being Monday, we were made aware of the civil suit filed on May 24th against Brandon McManus. We take allegations of this nature very seriously and are looking into the matter. We have been in communication with the league office and Brandon's representation and will reserve further comment at this time." Now, at the time of this recording, Brandon McManus or his lawyers or both have yet to make any kind of statement. In fact, right there just now, you're not going to see it, but I went ahead and just looked for an update just in case when it dropped since we started recording this thing. Brandon McManus signed a one-year deal this offseason with the Commanders, $3.6 million to join Washington. Again, spent 2023 with the Jacksonville Jaguars on a one-year, $2 million deal. Before that, was most well known as the Denver Broncos kicker, also spent time with the Colts and Giants organizations. Bottom line, guys, this is just kind of the way that I think that things are going to go. They're going to have to cut him. They can't. This Washington Commanders team can't spend all offseason the way that they have, talking about standards, talking about holding each other accountable, talking about turning the page if you're Josh Harris, talking about moving past all of the dark cloud business that came before them, and have this hanging over a player that is on the active roster. The best case in my eyes, just judging, weighing the treatment of persons and navigating the social structures and the PR part of this whole thing, is you tell them, you say you didn't go do this, go fight it, win your case, prove that you're innocent, or prove your lack of liability. It's a civil court, it's not a criminal court, so it's not proving your innocence, it's proving that you're not liable or whatever it is, and we'll bring you back. Right? If you get vindicated, we'll bring you back. But until then, go out there, fight your fight, do what you need to do, focus on that. But the best thing for this franchise, and to be quite honest with you, with the NFL in general, remember, the NFL has a terrible track record with the treatment of women, treatment of employees, all that stuff. The best thing that they can do is not keep a player on the payroll that has this kind of accusation going on against them, especially if it's proven liable. I mean, if you take this guy through this season and week 8, 9, 10, whatever it is, he gets found liable for these accusations, you have now paid a player millions of dollars. You have now supported a player who is now being proven liable for these accusations. You can't do that. The Houston Texans couldn't do it with an MVP candidate, potential franchise quarterback. The Washington Commanders certainly can't do it with a veteran kicker playing for his third team in 3 years. So if the Washington Bears made that move and they cut him. Free agent options out there. Robbie Gould, 40 years old, 27 of 32 for field goals last year, including 2 of 2 from 50-plus yards. So there's an option for you. Greg Zuerlein, 35 years old, so a little bit cheaper, 30 of 37 in 2022. Mason Crosby, 38 years old, 25 of 29 last year, but only 1 of 4 from 50-plus. That's kind of concerning. And then my preference, I guess, if you had to come to this situation, would be Zane Gonzalez, former Arizona State Sun Devil. I'm not even going to shy away from that. I don't care. 28 years old. He did miss all of 2022 with a groin injury. Does have a little bit of injury history, but if he took all that year off, was able to heal, and he's healthy. When he is healthy, Zane Gonzalez is certainly one of the more accurate kickers in the NFL. He's a little bit younger, so you never know. You might strike gold in that situation. But it's definitely a situation we're going to monitor. We'll see what the Washington Commanders do in the coming days. But, just, again, reading the tea leaves, the landscape of the NFL, the landscape of the Washington Commanders specifically, and what they've been preaching all offseason, what they've been trying to do, what they've been talking about. I just don't see a way that Brandon McManus stays on this team unless this thing gets dropped with the quickness. So we'll see what comes. But for now, we're going to wrap up this episode. Next episode, again, will be a mailbag episode. So if you've got questions for that, just drop them in the YouTube comment section. Hit me up on Twitter at dharrison82 or text me directly by becoming a Locked On Commanders Insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to do that today. Don't forget to also check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Thank you for coming through on a consistent basis like you do. Till we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.